Hello, and welcome to the ID Talk podcast. My name is Peter Counter, and I am the editor-in-chief at FindBiometrics and Mobile ID World, where we are preparing for the FIDO Alliance's inaugural Authenticate conference to be held virtually November 9th through 20th. That's why today on ID Talk, FindBiometrics and Mobile ID World President Peter O'Neill interviews Andrew Shikiar, Executive Director of the FIDO Alliance. Their conversation begins with a reflection on FIDO's 2020 as it moved forward in its mission of adoption and implementation. O'Neill and Shikiar go on to discuss the accelerated state of digital transformation and how it has affected the FIDO ecosystem. And of course, they delve into what we can expect from this month's Authenticate conference. The interview is a great primer on FIDO ahead of the virtual event, which you can register for at authenticatecon.com. So without further ado, I am pleased to present FIDO Alliance's Andrew Shikiar right here on the ID Talk podcast.
Hello and welcome to ID Talk podcast. My name is Peter O'Neill and I am the president of FindBiometrics and Mobile ID World. And I am very pleased to be speaking with my long-term colleague, Andrew Shikiar, who is the executive director and CMO of the FIDO Alliance. And you know, Andrew, this is about the time of year when we would normally be planning out our meetups for the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, which, you know, isn't going to happen. And my, how times have changed. But I was also thinking how long I've been associated and known the FIDO Alliance. And right from the very beginning, we've been following your remarkable growth and success. And before we get on to talk about your upcoming conference, Authenticate, I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the past year. Can you give us the headlines from the FIDO Alliance, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Peter. And it's great to talk to you. And like you, it's been obviously a very different year for all of us. I think in a normal year, I would have had the chance to have gotten together with you 2 or 3 times at shows. We usually bump into each other at Money 2020, Mobile World Congress, and maybe something in between. So obviously, we're all adapting to this virtual world, and FIDO Alliance is no different. And 2020 has been another positive year for FIDO. We've seen a number of key things happen this year so far. So backing up, if we look back in 2019, 2019 is very much what I describe as a year of FIDO, reaching the platform. FIDO became part of Windows 10. It became part of any Android 7 or later device. So, it really set the stage for a much broader addressable market for service providers to reach with FIDO authentication. That momentum was followed in 2020. So we've seen a broader embrace of FIDO authentication by Apple, who is now supporting FIDO authentication using native authenticators in Safari on Mac OS and iOS. That's super exciting. And Apple's backed up this kind of technical implementation with a strong commitment to FIDO Alliance itself. Apple joined our board of directors at the beginning of the year and has been a very active participant in helping lead FIDO Alliance and its members come to this next phase of the Alliance's arc and trajectory, which I think is very much focused on adoption and implementation. So the specifications are mature. Obviously, we're still smoothing out some edges here and there, but the specifications are mature. So we're very focused as an alliance on helping people be successful in rolling FIDO out to protect their customers and protect their employees and protect their business partners who are all logging on to secure services. And that requires understanding a better user experience, establishing best practices for how to deploy FIDO, and then seeing requisite modifications and or changes in the platforms and services that are supporting and implementing FIDO authentication. So the headline, in a very roundabout answer to your initial question, Peter, is that ongoing momentum, further coalescence, around FIDO Alliance as the industry body for standards-based strong authentication, and more implementations in market today.
So much news going on, and We had a very interesting discussion just yesterday as part of our financial month, talking with some of the industry leaders about how the pandemic has really escalated a lot of the stuff going on in finance, digital onboarding, and then you add in remote work everywhere. Has that also escalated what's happening at FIDO?
Absolutely. Well, not necessarily at FIDO Alliance as a body, but what we're seeing in the broader ecosystem. Absolutely. I think what everyone's seeing is that digital transformation plans have been have moved from a 5-year schedule to a 5-month schedule, and that impacts how you're implementing security and authentication, both within the enterprise and externally to customers. I know in the financial sector, where we also have a lot of big stakeholders in the alliance, a lot of their plans have been upended by this, right? So you have on the consumer side, at least, you've banks who have always had kind of a holdout segment of their populations that are in-branch customers, and all of a sudden there's no branches to go to. So they're focusing on how to support these customers as they're being pushed to use digital tools and mobile apps and things like that. So you have inside that segment of customers, you have a very at-risk population who are at risk to scammers and spoofers and hackers. And so it's really important to provide those customers with a strong methodology for logging into systems and services, but also a very user-friendly approach. And that's really the sweet spot that FIDO is aiming to hit. Likewise, the distributed workforce. And talk about a great target area for hackers. You have all these remote workers who have, they have devices that can allow you to access their company's networks and system resources, and they're very vulnerable. So what I've heard from our vendors in the space who are, pushing different solutions, including FIDO security keys out to enterprises of all sizes, is that those plans have been rapidly accelerated. And it's the quickest way to help protect remote workers against phishing attacks, social engineering attacks, and things like that, is to give them a brain dead easy mechanism for second factor or primary authentication and a FIDO security key to prevent things like we saw with, say, the Twitter hack, where someone launched a phishing attack on the Twitter sysadmins and duped them into providing second factor credentials that could be manipulated by that hacker to access the Twitter backend. Simply put, if they had a FIDO security key, that problem would not have happened. So, yeah, COVID has certainly changed roadmaps and in many ways accelerated the imperative for deploying FIDO authentication.
Well, I think there's the headline right there, from 5 years down to 5 months. We're certainly feeling the same thing. Now I'd like to shift gears and talk a little bit about your upcoming conference. When and why did FIDO launch Authenticate?
Yeah, so Authenticate, thanks for asking. Authenticate is, the FIDO conference. And, we've been talking about launching a FIDO conference for some time. In fact, those of you who follow FIDO know that we run a pretty active seminar series, and we'll typically, we meet as a membership body 3 times a year all over the world. Once in the Americas, once in Europe, once in Asia. The day prior, we'll typically have a full day seminar where we get strong attendance. Our vendor members like sponsoring those and have a chance to interact with attendees. And so what we've been looking at doing is, what we initially looked at doing was, expanding that paradigm a little bit to turn our quarterly member meetings into a public/private event. We're going to have a 2-day, jam-packed agenda of a public event, including expo area, and then a 2-day member meeting. And so we launched that last year around this time with the aim of holding Authenticate in June in Seattle. And frankly speaking, Peter, we didn't know what response would be to that. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. For example, we put out an RFP for call for speakers, basically. And, it's a 2-day agenda, so we don't have that many slots. We had around probably 4 or 5 times the number of responses as we had for slots. So it was great to see the types of submissions that were coming in. What was really actually inspiring about that process was seeing the number of case studies coming in. We at FIDO and the marketing team, chase down case studies like detectives, trying to find case studies wherever we can. And we had all these unsolicited case studies from all corners of the world and all sorts of industries, people submitting and wanting to talk about how they're implementing FIDO. So the response to that was positive. On the sponsor side, we sold our sponsorships, and We were selling registrations, and we were really on track to have a great event in Seattle. And then, of course, COVID hit. And so we took the painstaking decision to push the event back to the fall, aiming to hope to have a physical event. And then, obviously, as everyone got their arms around the breadth of the impact of COVID, we realized that we had to pivot to a virtual event, which is what we have done. So we're launching Authenticate. It's a public conference. It runs from November 9th to 20th. We interspersed across that time period, we have 6 days of content. So we took our 2 days of content and spread it out over 6 days, understanding that people can't block whole days anymore to attend the conference. So there's morning blocks and afternoon blocks, 2 hours each. We have lunch and learns in the middle, which are meant to be a little bit more interactive for people to roll up their sleeves and go deeper on topics. And it's really a great agenda. We're super excited about it. We brought forward most of those case studies. We have probably around 15 or so different case studies of companies sharing their experiences in deploying FIDO. We have technical overviews on different aspects of the FIDO specifications and implementation best practices and things like that. So really, I think we have content that's applicable for a variety of audiences, and depending on what people want to get out of the show and what they want to learn about FIDO and how they want to bring that into their own product and service development.
Well, that's a very full agenda, and education right now is so critical because of all the things we spoke about. That's great. Best of luck with your event. And what are the future plans for Authenticate?
Yeah, so based on the response we've seen, we really want to try to build on this. So first of all, we are fully committed to trying to hold a physical event in October 2021. So we'll be back in Seattle in late October 2021. God willing, we'll be able to do that, right? That everyone gets there. We're able to get back to having some in-person meetings. Obviously, if that's not possible to happen, we'll go back to a virtual event next fall 2021. Additionally, I think you'll see us as we move into next year doing some smaller type Authenticate events, maybe quarterly summits, if you will, fully virtual. Understanding that people are adapting this virtual environment as a means of engaging and consuming content. So I think you'll see us doing that throughout 2021 as well. And really just trying to build some community around this. So while it is, the FIDO conference, we really look at authentication at a broader level. So yes, FIDO authentication, but also adjacent approaches to user authentication and adjacent topics as well, including areas around identity verification, IoT, and some of the adjacent spaces to user authentication. So I think Authenticate will grow to encompass all of those and really help educate the attendees and community.
Well, Andrew, thank you very much for filling us in. It sounds like a very exciting week-long kind of activity, and I look forward to meeting up with you next fall, hopefully at your Authenticate event then. And in the meantime, all the best. Stay safe.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
And so concludes our interview with FIDO Alliance Executive Director Andrew Shikiar. To learn more about the Authenticate event, including how to register for free, visit AuthenticateCon.com. I'd like to thank Andrew for joining us on ID Talk today, and thank you to Peter O'Neill for conducting the interview. Our podcast theme music is by Logomrad. I have been your host, Peter Counter. Thank you for listening to the ID Talk podcast.